What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for Game Week 23, and there's lots to discuss. I've got 5 free transfers, so what moves am I going to make? Am I using the assistant manager chip in Game Week 24? Which triple up on Liverpool am I going for? How many Everton players? And before all that, I'll quickly show you how I did in Game Week 22. So let's get into it. So let's start with how I did in Game Week 22, and it was another red arrow for me. So I dropped from about 181k to 203k, which isn't ideal, but off the back of 45 points, I expected the red arrow to be much worse. I didn't own Chris Wood, my captain blanked. Solanke injury news came up after the deadline. So to get 45 points and only have a small red arrow, especially in a week where I rolled the transfer, I actually feel okay about it. It does mean I've dropped from 140 to 200k in 2 weeks, which I'm not as happy about, but hopefully we can turn it around over the next few game weeks. In terms of where the points came from, Eze got another assist, so since I've had him, it's 4 attack and returns in 4 game weeks, so he's been really good to me. Every other attacker blanked. In Burmo, who I wasn't expecting much from against Liverpool, Palmer, Salah, João Pedro and Isak. The only slight, and I mean very slight, silver lining is I captained Salah over Palmer and Isak and he got 1 more point. But that was it. There was nothing really to write home about. Solanke injury after the deadline was not ideal whatsoever. The only good thing was I put Anderson from Fulham ahead of Rodgers on the bench, so I did get 6 points off the bench. So even if I'd done Solanke to Wood, it would have only gained me an extra 6 points, which, to be honest, I could do with at the moment, but it's really not the end of the world. So I'm not too annoyed that I didn't make the move. And also, I didn't have the injury news for Solanke. If I knew he was out, I would have absolutely got Chris Wood. So, look, it happens. Defensively, though, pretty decent. So Anderson off the bench, Munoz 6 points, and Trent Alexander-Arnold an 11-pointer. Apparently, his head's not in Madrid anymore, and he can start getting us FPL points again. Raya and Gabriel have not been great last 4 game weeks, but I didn't expect as many clean sheets with the fixture run that Arsenal have had. It would have been nice to get at least one, but I'm not panicking about them just yet. So, rubbish week, truth be told, but only a small red arrow. Hopefully we can make things better from 23 onwards, I should say. So for the first time this season, I've got 5 free transfers. I'm still getting the odd comment every now and again asking me how I've got more than 2 transfers, but basically, if you haven't seen, FPL changed the rules at the start of the season, so you can save up to 5, but no more than that. So I've got to make a transfer this week. The 2 main things I'm thinking about: 1, do I use the assistant manager chip in Game Week 24? And 2, if I don't, which third Liverpool player do I go for, and how many Everton players do I want to bring in? Now, on the assistant manager chip, I'm like 90% certain that I'm not going to use it next week. I don't really fancy using it on David Moyes. I think Leicester at home is not a bad fixture, but would it be a complete shock if Everton drew that game? There's no table bonus for that game either. There is against Liverpool, and it's the final Merseyside derby in the Premier League at Goodison Park, so Everton will be right up for that. But Liverpool are so good, I could see them walking away with a win. So I don't really want to risk it on Moyes. And then with Slot, I don't think he's bad, but I feel like 2 away games, there's potential banana skins there, and I just don't want to risk it. Essentially, my feelings around Slot and assistant manager in 24 is I can almost certainly get as good an opportunity later, but hopefully a better one. So there's 2 doubles later on, 33, 36. I've got assistant manager and bench boost to use in those 2 weeks. At the very least, I expect to get something as good as Slot, but my hope would be that I would get something better. So that's probably why I'm not going to use it. There is a very, very, very small chance we get a provisional announcement for a Spurs double in 25 if they blank in 29 against Fulham. If we get that before the 24 deadline, then I'll almost certainly use assistant manager on Slot, then Ange, and then whoever else in 26. But I don't think that's going to happen. And by the way, if I bring a third Liverpool player in this week and we get that provisional announcement next week, I will sell that third Liverpool player. But I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm probably not going to use assistant manager next week. In terms of my defence, I'm pretty happy with it. Raya and Gabriel double up against Wolves away. I know Arsenal have got no clean sheets in 4, but the fixtures have been tough enough. This one's a little bit easier. I'd rather it was at home. I don't think there's a guarantee of a clean sheet, but it's not a bad fixture. So I'm not in a rush to sell either of those players. I could do Raya to Alisson as my third Liverpool player. The Alisson and Fabianski combination is quite nice, especially if you're not free hitting in 29 or wildcarding in 30. But as it stands, I still feel like I'm going to wildcard in Game Week 30. And if Fabianski loses his place and Liverpool beat Spurs in the Carabao Cup semi-final, then I haven't got a goalkeeper for 29. So I'm not sure I'm going to go for Alisson, but I haven't completely written it off. With Gabriel, I'm loath to sell him because of how good he is from an attacking point of view. And I still back the Arsenal defence even without Saliba. And we've kind of gotten past most of their bad fixtures now. If we look at the ones that are coming up, it's not an easy run, like City at home in 24. Then it's Leicester away, West Ham at home, Forest away. I think most of the next 5 game weeks are actually pretty good for Arsenal. So I don't really want to sell Gabriel unless I absolutely have to. And also, by the way, if I get to a position where I decide to not wildcard in 30, then having Gabriel for Fulham at home, Everton away and Brentford at home could be pretty nice after that blank in 29. So I don't want to sell Gabriel unless I absolutely have to. Munoz, decent enough against Brentford at home, attacking potential there. I do have Mbeumo, so it's not great to have an attacker playing against a defender, but I think Munoz in isolation is better than Anderson and Greaves on my bench. There is a possibility that I will free up money to do Anderson to Van Dijk, which means I will bench Munoz. Not because Munoz is a bad option, but I just think Van Dijk is better. I've only got 0.1 in the bank, but I can make an attacking downgrade to get the cash for Anderson to Van Dijk, which looks quite nice. So that is one of the transfers defensively I'm thinking of. And then Trent is great. Ipswich at home, double game week, Wolves at home. He's going absolutely nowhere. The minutes are there, the attack and returns are there. He's just gone up to 7.3 million. I think he's a really good option. So Van Dijk potentially coming in for me. Konate's an option as well. He's good value at 5.1. I just don't trust his injury record. He's also playing with painkillers at the moment. He mentioned that in a press conference the other day. By the way, I suspect lots of footballers play with painkillers way more often than we know. But it's Konate. I just don't trust it. So I don't really want to go there unless I absolutely have to. And in terms of Everton defenders, they've got Brighton away this week. So I'm not in a mad rush to get them. I'd rather put it off until 24. Raya to Pickford, if I don't go to Alisson, is definitely right up there. That will free up money as well. And then one of Greaves, Anderson, Munoz, whoever I haven't sold yet, to Mikalenko next week is probably on the table as well. So as it stands, I'm playing a 3-5-2 this week, and I'm pretty happy with most of the midfielders that I've got in my squad at the moment. So Cole Palmer, as I mentioned yesterday, is the most sold midfielder going into game week 23, which, to be honest, I don't really understand. Even if the stats have been slightly worse recently, we know what he's capable of. This is a guy that's already got 14 goals, 7 assists this season. The fixtures coming up after City away are pretty decent as well. And also, it's not like Man City is a watertight defence. Look what happened in the Champions League last night. So unless Maresca comes out in his press conference on Friday and says that Palmer is injured and out for a little bit, he's going absolutely nowhere. Eze is not essential to my squad or anything like that, but I'm not in a rush to sell him. The fixtures for Palace are pretty good. I'm sure there's lots of you looking to bring Mateta in this week, for example. Brentford at home is a nice game. He's got me 4 returns in 4. Be nice to get some more goals instead of assists, but I really can't complain with what he's done. And also, he's a little bit cheaper than a lot of other popular midfielders like maybe Bruno Fernandes, Anthony Gordon, etc. So happy with the value that Eze is providing. Salah is my captain, obvious choice against Ipswich at home. He's going nowhere with the double next week as well. In Burma, I've held through the tougher fixtures now, so there's no need to get rid of him. The time to sell him would have been before the Liverpool and Man City games. I didn't do that, so he's definitely staying. And the fixtures coming up for Brentford are quite nice. So it's Palace away this week. Like I said, up against Munoz, not ideal, but there's not really a major need to worry about that. Then Spurs at home. They might have Romero van der Ven back by then, but not a bad fixture either way. West Ham away, Leicester away, Everton at home. Then it's another home game against Villa. I think Mbeumo just stays now. He has overperformed quite a lot this season, but objectively, he's still just a good pick. 90 minutes, the penalty. It's 90 minutes every single week as well. So even if the stats have come down from last year, you've always got those minutes there. So the returns are probably coming for him like they have been for most of the season. And then I've got Rodgers against West Ham at home. Now, interestingly, Rodgers might not last in my team that much longer. But as a cheap midfielder for the next 3 game weeks, there's no need to get rid of him. West Ham at home, Wolves away, and then Ipswich at home next 3 game weeks. He's playing every single game. I know lots of people are moving to Bournemouth midfielders, and I quite like them, right? Both Semenyo and Clive, but maybe even Utara as well. But for me, there's going to be no need to move for one of them until I get past this Ipswich game. I know in the meantime, the Bournemouth midfielders, if they keep performing, will go up in price, which is not ideal, and I might get priced out of making the move, but I'll just worry about that when it comes. There's no need to preempt stuff like that. So as much as people have moved cheap midfielders around, I've stuck with Rodgers, and I'm pretty happy with him. The only midfielder I'm missing this week, which I think could damage my rank, is Anthony Gordon. When you look at the fixtures for game week 23, Newcastle against Southampton away is a little bit... Am I on 23 here? Yeah, there it is. Newcastle versus Southampton away is a little bit of a worry, but I think once I'm past that Southampton game, there's not going to be as much of a need to have Gordon. It's then Fulham at home, and then you've got that City away game. You've got Liverpool away in 27, I think it is. They might blank in 29 as well. So I don't really want to add him to my squad. For what it's worth, depending on how the Carabao Cup semi-final results go and the FA Cup results as well, I might need more Newcastle players. I might end up free hitting in 29. I'm not quite sure what my chip strategy is, but because of that, I want to try and save as many transfers as possible. And as much as I quite like double and blank game week season, right? It's nice for FPL. There's a lot of points, lots of things to manage, but I hate this part of it where we're not quite sure what's going to happen. We've got an idea, but we need more and more cup results so that the fixture schedule starts to kind of pan out and we can plan properly. So I think where possible, I'm in like a holding pattern right now where I don't want to make too many moves that I'm not 100% sure are the right ones. So as much as Gordon is a good option, if you've got him, obviously you keep him. I just don't think I can bring him in. And plus my midfield looks pretty good. So if I can get away with not having him this week, I think things will look a lot better next week. And then up front, I've got João Pedro against Everton at home, Isak against Southampton away, and on the bench it's Solanke against Leicester at home, who's currently red flagged and probably going to be out for at least a couple of weeks. So he needs to be sold, and I'll come on to who I'm going to sell him for in a minute. Just quickly on captaincy, some of you might be looking at going for Isak. Not a problem whatsoever. He's a good pick. I would not argue against that. But for me, I've given it no consideration whatsoever. It's definitely going to be Salah for me. Like, I think before the Man City game last week, people would have said things like Ipswich don't concede a huge amount of goals, but their expected goals conceded over the season is pretty bad, very similar to Southampton, but Salah's at home and Isak's away. And in isolation, if they've got similar fixtures, I'm always going to go for Salah. And I'm happy to back against him when the time is right. I just don't think this week is that time. So Salah captain, Isak vice captain. Isak definitely staying in the team this week. João Pedro, no plans to sell him this week. But potentially, if I do Solanke to GAKPO in 23, I may do João Pedro to Calvert-Lewin in 24, but I'm not completely set on that. João Pedro has probably underwhelmed quite a bit. The stats aren't great. They are down on last year as well. But he's less than 6 million. I'm not in a mad panic about getting rid of him. I would have to free up money to upgrade him to like someone like Mateta or Visser. I just think there's more important things to be worrying about. With Solanke, the obvious move is probably to go to GAKPO, right? I checked the AI suggested transfers over on Hub. That is what it's suggesting to do. If you want to check yours out for your team, link in the description below, by the way. 7-day free trial, 30% off at the moment. It just makes a lot of sense. In one transfer, I can get my third Liverpool player. GAKPO's been rested in the Champions League. He's now got Ipswich at home. I'd still have 5 transfers next week. I'd be tripled up on Liverpool. GAKPO started every game in the league since game week 12. Jota's injured at the moment and going to be out for a couple of weeks. It just makes a lot of sense. And I think right now that is probably the move that I will do, but it's not a guarantee, right? And the reason is I am considering just moving for Calvert-Lewin instead. That would free up money so I can do Anderson to Van Dijk. So not only do I get another double game week player in, but I also get my triple up on Liverpool, and Van Dijk's security of starts over many game weeks looks pretty good. Like right now, I think Gakpo's minutes are pretty decent, and I think his starts are not really in question. And I would not be surprised if he starts all 4 games over the next 3 game weeks, but it's not a guarantee. Then it's City away. And then, okay, in 27 and 28, Newcastle at home and Southampton at home are good. By the way, if he starts all these games, I think Gakpo's an excellent option. I've just got doubts over whether that happens. And I know the upside is potentially there over the next 3 weeks. But FPL's a long game, right? And there is part of me that's thinking, am I giving up too many points in the short term? Like I've got 5 transfers, I'm allowed to use them. There is a lot of chaos that could potentially be coming with blanks and doubles and stuff like that. It's a nice position to be in where you can be that flexible with all those moves. So do I want to bring Gakpo in just to have to transfer him back out later? And I know what you're thinking, right? Calvert-Lewin's a potential transfer back out, but he would almost certainly just become my 8th attacker. So I play him in the double and I just don't play him much after that. The only thing with that thinking is stuff can happen, right? Red cards, suspensions, injuries, and all of a sudden you're relying on a player you don't really want to rely on. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do. When I look through my defence for the next few weeks, like this week without Van Dijk, it looks absolutely fine. In game week 24, I could bring in Mykolenko, so I would have Trent for the double, Mykolenko for the double, and if I've got to play Gabriel against Man City at home, it's not the end of the world. Then in 25, Trent Wolves at home, Munoz Everton at home, Gabriel Leicester away. 26, Gabriel West Ham at home, Munoz, Fulham away, and Anderson's got Crystal Palace at home, so I could play him. And I'm not ever going to really want to bench Trent. Game week 27, Trent, Newcastle at home, Gabriel, Forest away, Munoz, Villa at home. The point I'm making to myself and I'm basically trying to talk myself into GAKPO is I don't necessarily need Van Dijk over all those weeks. So I could just do Solanke to GAKPO. And if it does go wrong and he starts to get really limited minutes, then I can always sell him. I've got so many transfers, I don't really need to massively worry about it. So I guess as it stands, right, if I go to GAKPO, let me just show you on here again. It's pretty handy to view it here. If I do Solanke out, right, obviously to GAKPO, which is what everyone wants me to do, and I get it, right? It's a pretty good move. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense. I take out Rodgers and I bench him. That's my 11. I go into game week 24. I probably sell Raya for Pickford, who's right at the top of the suggested transfers. And then that would give me 0.6 million in the bank, which lets me do Greaves or Anderson. I can decide next week to Mykolenko. So let me just take Greaves out and I'll put Mykolenko in here. And then this is what my team would look like for game week 24. So Mykolenko would go into the 11 instead of Munoz. GAKPO would obviously be in instead of, I don't know, instead of Rodgers or João Pedro, I'd probably always play the penalty taker. So let me just save that. So my team next week for 24 would have Pickford and Mykolenko double up on Everton defence. Gabriel City at home. Trent, Salah double up. Sorry, Trent, Salah and GAKPO from Liverpool. Palmer with West Ham at home. Eze Man United away. Mbeumo Spurs at home. Isak Fulham at home. João Pedro Forest away. And also, I would have 5 free transfers going into 24. I'd use 2 of them. So I still have 4 transfers in game week 25. It's just too obvious, isn't it? I don't know if I can talk myself out of that. I think Van Dijk's a great option for the double. And there is going to be a temptation for me to do Solanke to Calvert-Lewin and Anderson to... the thing is, I could always just do João Pedro to Calvert-Lewin next week. So Solanke to GAKPO, then next week get 3 Everton players. If I really want to go all in, the option's still there. So, yeah, I'm trying to talk myself out of it, but the more I think about it, the more it just makes sense. So Solanke to GAKPO, and then roll the rest of the 4 transfers into next week is probably the best option. And also then we're getting closer to the transfer window closing. It just makes sense. So yeah, that's probably going to be my move. If you enjoyed that video, that ramble, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below as well. And if you listen on podcast, rate 5 stars. Otherwise, I will hopefully catch you tomorrow for final thoughts. But there is a big storm coming to Ireland, so potentially my electric and internet might get knocked out. But as long as we're up and running, I will be doing a final thoughts video tomorrow and deadline stream on Saturday, which is a slightly later deadline of 1:30 UK time in the afternoon. I'm off. See you later.